A trespasser can legally acquire perfect title to real property. Adverse possession is the mechanism transferring title from the true owner to a trespasser who satisfies 5 specific common law elements for the duration of the statutory period. These required elements are actual, exclusive, open and notorious, hostile, and continuous. Failure to satisfy any single element defeats the adverse possession claim entirely. The underlying policy rationale punishes landowners who sleep on their property rights and rewards productive land use. State law sets the statutory period, typically ranging from 5 to 20 years. Once the statutory period is met, the adverse possessor obtains a new, original title that relates back to the exact date the possession began. This legal action simultaneously extinguishes the true owner's former title, completing the transfer. Actual possession requires the adverse possessor to physically occupy and use the land in the manner a reasonable true owner would. This standard considers the land's character and location. Sporadic or minor acts of trespass are insufficient to establish actual possession. The extent of the land claimed is strictly limited to the area actually occupied, unless the possessor claims under color of title. Exclusive possession means the adverse possessor is not sharing the property with the true owner or the general public. If 2 or more individuals adversely possess the land together, they may acquire title as co-tenants against the true owner. However, these co-possessors must still exclude the true owner from the property. Possession must be sufficiently visible and apparent to put a reasonably diligent true owner on notice of the occupation. The true owner is charged with constructive notice, meaning they should have known about the possession had they inspected the property diligently. Hidden or secret occupation fails this element because it does not provide adequate notice. Acts like fencing, cultivating, or building structures generally satisfy the open and notorious requirement. In cases of minor boundary line encroachments, some jurisdictions, following the main rule, require the true owner to have actual knowledge of the encroachment. This actual knowledge requirement applies unless the encroachment is substantial and obvious enough to provide constructive notice. Hostile possession requires the possessor to occupy the land without the true owner's permission. Granting permission defeats hostility and transforms the occupation into a license or a lease, preventing the accrual of adverse possession time. Jurisdictions adopt different standards regarding the adverse possessor's subjective state of mind. The objective standard, which is the majority rule, requires only that the possessor lacks permission, making the possessor's subjective belief about ownership irrelevant. The good faith standard requires the possessor mistakenly believe they own the land, acting under an honest mistake. Conversely, the bad faith standard, a minority rule, requires the possessor know they do not own the land and specifically intend to steal it from the true owner. Continuous possession requires the possessor use the land without significant interruption, consistent with how a true owner would use that specific type of property. Seasonal use of seasonal land, such as occupying a summer cabin only during the summer months, satisfies the continuity requirement. Tacking allows successive adverse possessors to combine their individual periods of possession to meet the total statutory requirement. Tacking is permitted only if there is privity between the successive possessors. Privity is established by a voluntary transfer of the property interest, such as a deed, a will, or an oral transfer of possession. Abandonment of the property by an adverse possessor breaks continuity and resets the statutory clock entirely. Color of title refers to a claim based on a written instrument, such as a deed or a will, that appears valid but is legally defective. Possessors claiming under color of title often benefit from a shorter statutory period in many states. Color of title also grants constructive possession of the entire tract described in the defective instrument, even if the adverse possessor only physically occupies a small portion. This constructive possession applies only if the true owner is not also occupying any part of the tract. If the true owner occupies any part of the tract, constructive possession is limited strictly to the area actually occupied by the adverse possessor. The statutory period is told, meaning paused, if the true owner suffers from a legal disability at the precise time the adverse possession begins. Common disabilities include minority, defined as being under 18 years old, imprisonment, or documented mental incompetence. If the disability arises after the adverse possession has already begun, it is irrelevant and does not toll the statute of limitations. Once the disability is removed, the true owner typically has a specified period, often 5 or 10 years, to bring a recovery action. Adverse possession generally cannot be claimed against land owned by federal, state, or local governments. This immunity applies especially to land held for public use, due to the doctrine of sovereign immunity.